terrible incident a few days ago in Indian-controlled Kashmir has led to escalating tensions between India and Pakistan. At the same time, our socialist government has decided it's going to mess around with nature. And like all communist governments do, that is going to end in a disaster. All right, so it says here, this is from The Week, why UK scientists are trying to dim the sun. The government is funding controversial geoengineering techniques that could prove helpful in slowing climate change. Oh, yeah. What they're going to do is they're going to put stuff in the clouds to make them more reflective, as if we have too much sun in Britain. Yeah. And who's to say that this won't have some sort of runaway effect, even if they can do it? As the effects of global warming continue to intensify, so has interest in some sort of backup plan, said the New York Times. It would be the New York Times being, all for this sort of thing, instead of being utterly terrified by the socialist idea that you can change people, that you can change the world. But in any case, we don't have to bother about that. I suggest the government can save its money, you see, because India and Pakistan might be about to go to war. I would like to point out to all of you that both India and Pakistan are nuclear powers. So there's no need to worry about global warming, because when those two guys go for each other, we'll have a nuclear winter anyway. I suggest you stock up on firewood. I'll bet you're thinking that was a quick change, weren't you? I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on X.com, I'm on YouTube, Rumble and Minds. I'm also on Gab and BitChute, but because of the free speech laws in our Starmatopia, you can't get them in the UK. If you have a VPN that pretends to be elsewhere, you'll be able to see me on those channels as well. But meanwhile, X.com, YouTube, Rumble and Minds. So we'll start with a Belfast-based band called Kneecap. Now, I want to say something to you to start with. Do you know what kneecapping was? During the IRA troubles, kneecapping was a form of torture and permanent disability imposed by the IRA on people they saw as, not supporting them. And what they do was they'd take an ordinary domestic drill and they drill through somebody's kneecap, which effectively rendered them unable to bend the affected leg anymore and gave them permanent disability. And this was a particularly cruel and vicious thing to do. And when I heard that there was a band that had called themselves after that, I thought, they can't be very nice people, just to glorify that sort of thing. And then it turns out they're the sort of people who glorify Hamas as well. When you consider the sort of torture and dreadful crimes that Hamas imposed on its victims, you can see that these thugs here have a fellow feeling with that sort of activity. The Irish Republican band from Belfast, it says here, which received a grant from taxpayers, is being investigated for apparent on-stage shouts of "Up Hamas, up Hezbollah." At the Coachella festival in California, they unveiled a sign that said "F Israel," which is what Hamas was trying to do. This is a thread. Apparently, they've also released pictures. Now, this guy here, I don't know whether we ever do see his face. I've not gone into Kneecap that closely, but he's wearing an IRA flag and not showing his face, which is I think, are very typical of lefty cowards. OK, I don't know whether he does show his face. Maybe he does on occasions. But there's a picture here of him reading a book called The Voice of Hezbollah. I don't know whether he can actually read or not. But it is the statements of Syed Hassan Nasrallah. I won't go through all of them, but this X.com poster called Danny Morris has quoted stuff from this book, and it says, page 188, this year coincides with the 50th anniversary of the historic catastrophe and tragic event, namely the establishment of the state of the Zionist Jews, the descendants of apes and pigs. So I'd say that Nasrallah isn't exactly that well disposed towards Jews, and whether he is actually reading this or not, he's giving it a boost. And it doesn't surprise me that they call themselves Kneecap, that they pose with these looks on their faces. They may think that's very cool. I think they're a bunch of racist thugs. And I can only rejoice that their visa to perform in America has been revoked. All right, that's so much for Kneecap. Now we come to the two-tier justice system, which doesn't exist according to the government. This is our Justice Secretary, Shabina Mahmood.
As somebody who's of an ethnic minority background myself, I do not stand for any differential treatment before the law for anyone of any kind, and there will never be a two-tier sentencing approach under my watch or under this Labour government.
Right. Well, let's just have a look at this. Left-wing protester avoids jail amid Southport riots, two-tier justice claims. I would like to point out that there was an MP who beat somebody up. CCTV caught him knocking somebody to the ground and then beating and kicking him while the semi-conscious victim was on the pavement. And he got away with more or less a reprimand. He certainly didn't go to jail. On the other hand, there's a chap called Peter Lynch who held up a poster saying that the police are corrupt. He got sent to jail for 3 years and died there. It's one of those Epstein things where he committed suicide. All right, but this one, left-wing protester avoids jail, it says here. This is the person on the phone, looking stern. A left-wing protester who assaulted a man at an immigration demonstration in the wake of the Southport killings has walked free from court amid accusations of two-tier justice. I'd say it's more to do with not accusations, but proof of two-tier justice. Caroline Lenehan snatched an iPhone from Dylan Fontaine and smashed it on the ground during a confrontation at a rally in Bournemouth last summer. OK, and The Spectator says, why are MPs turning a blind eye to two-tier policing? You know, the Labour MPs, you can understand them doing that because they're supporting the man who's giving them the job, Keir Starmer, and his team, who are all for the two-tier system, whatever they say. But the Conservatives aren't making as much of a fuss about it as they should. And you wonder why. Do they think it will never happen to them? Of course it will happen to them. Just look what happened to Lucy Connolly. She's in jail 2 years and 7 months, a mother of a small child and a husband who needs some caring. The husband is a Conservative councillor. Does that tell you anything about Lucy Connolly's case and the case of this person here? Lucy Connolly made a hysterical X post and took it down for 4 hours later because she reckoned it wasn't right. But that didn't help at all. And it says, this is in The Spectator, does Britain have a two-tier attitude towards policing? The Home Affairs Committee, made up of 11 Tory, Lib Dem and Labour MPs, is dismissive of the suggestion. It was disgraceful to see the police officers who bore the brunt of the violence being undermined by baseless claim of two-tier policing. Its report, published earlier this month, says of the police response to the ugly scenes that followed the Southport murders last July. OK, well, I think we have our answer here. And I don't know why these MPs aren't paying more attention to that. But hey, that's just my opinion. And maybe Lucy Connolly's and possibly Peter Lynch's grandchildren as well. And this is an interesting article by somebody called David Wright, and it was it was published in an online publication called Conservative Woman, and it's entitled The No-Nonsense Way to Stop the Boats. The governments, all of them, Labour and before them Conservative, have said there is no way to stop the boats, and the NLI, the National Lifeboat and other organisations have refused to turn the boats back on the grounds that it's their job to save lives and they can't turn back people who might be in danger. I mean, if you look at that dinghy there with those people on it, it's certainly in a dangerous state. And you can see the ethical problem that the RNLI have. Although I do have to say, that used to be one of the charities that I donated to, whenever they say, do you want to pay for this and do you want to add £1 or whatever to donate? I used to donate to the RNLI and I've stopped doing that because I feel that they aren't doing enough to help us protect our shores. They could, after all, accompany this dinghy back to France or whatever, but yeah, whatever. So although I understand there is an ethical problem, I do feel a little reserved about them, let's put it that way. Well, it says here, illegal channel crossings by rubber dinghies overloaded, predominantly with young men, have been an increasingly worrying trend for many years, yet successive governments have made no serious or workable attempt to do anything about it. And it says migrant crossings are up by more than 40% last year. The French authorities are providing life jackets to ensure migrants can cross the channel safely. The jackets are returned to the French once the migrants have been escorted to the midpoint of the channel and are rescued by British authorities, so they can be reused. I mean, this is real clown world stuff, isn't it? We've seen French police on the beach at Calais standing idly by while migrants board dinghies to Dover. OK, he talks about the Australian solution, which was to have the Royal Australian Navy intercept migrant boats and forcing them back to Indonesia, whence they came. And then he says that the current fleet of Border Force cutters, there's only 5 of them, and none of them is in particularly good condition. They're all pretty old. And he's assuming that if there are only 2 in repairs, that means there are only 3 patrolling all of Britain. Of course, that's total nonsense. He said that we should get more boats on the open market, paint them grey with mount a gun on the foredeck and man them with recently retired Royal Navy volunteers. So they're not entirely exactly in the Navy. They will be some sort of sub-government organisation. They can go from, he thinks, from Folkestone. And he's actually come up with a whole plan here. They should intercept the smugglers wherever they are in the channel, whether they're right against our shores at the midpoint or just leaving the French beach, direct them back to the beach and then destroy the dinghies with box cutters and take the outboard motors and just dump them in the water and then go back to their patrol. Now, he says the French president would immediately be protesting, but he hasn't got a leg to stand on. France is signatory to the Schengen Agreement, which requires migrants to be processed in the first safe country they enter. So it says here, not only that, but Britain has paid France almost £500 million to stop the migrants arriving on the beaches and boarding dinghies to Dover. So it says France has done nothing but trouser this cash. Well, I think it sounds like a plan, actually. And maybe it will be taken up by the Reform Party, because it says here, Farage plans to have a minister for deportations. So instead of having the Home Office and various quasi-governmental organisations dealing with the migrant problem, there will be a minister specifically tasked with dealing with migrants. And a minister could put a plan like this into action. Well, it sounds fair enough. Let's hope that's some sort of a plan, because neither the Conservatives nor Labour have done anything at all that is in any way even remotely effective. In fact, we have been running on fumes for the past 20 years when it comes to governments. They just don't seem the Conservatives have a little bit more of a clue than Labour, but not a lot so far. Anyway, it says here, trans people seeking asylum abroad after Supreme Court ruling. Now, you may not have heard about this, but there was a law about equalities, and for some reason it was taken to be that if a man identified as a woman, irrespective of what bits he had on his torso, he was to get the same rights as any woman, and that included rights to female-only changing rooms and things like that, and to be moderators in rape crisis centres. I mean, it was ridiculous. Well, the Supreme Court said no, the Original Equalities Act applies to biological women only. And this has sent the whole trans cult into a sort of meltdown. It says here, trans people are seeking asylum abroad after Supreme Court ruling. So I have an idea, you see, because there are all these dinghies that these migrants are coming to the country in, and there are plans, according to the previous article, for dragging them back to France. So why don't the various authorities just put a few trans people on these dinghies before they drag them back to France? Two birds with one stone. By the way, I am not talking about proper trans people. I'm not talking about those men who have genuine body dysphoria, who get themselves changed, who resemble women and don't try to make a fuss of themselves. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about a different sort of person altogether, and I think you understand that. Right. OK, now we're talking about a new portrait of the King and the Queen consort, not the Queen. Somebody said it was like a snarling two-headed monster. I don't think it is, actually. This is the new portrait. This is a photograph from which the portrait was taken. There's something really wrong with the mouth there for sure. It doesn't look like a two-headed snarling monster. It does look like somebody painted it by numbers, though. It's terrible. I'm sorry, Philip Bouta. It is awful. It's got no originality at all. I mean, that's a holiday snapshot. It's fine. Painting a holiday snapshot is not what a painting is all about nowadays. And it's part of a whole... Oh, hang on a minute. I'm going to get something else here. Yeah, sorry, I found it. The Diana statue. It's all there's just a horrible set of dreadful pieces of public art to do with the royal family recently. I mean, this is, well, again, it's not a monstrous, it's just not a portrait. It's just a painted up picture of a snapshot, except for that problem with the mouth there. Wrong. Anyway, but I mean, anyone remember this? This was the Diana statue. I mean, it's terrible. I made a whole video about that, by the way. And then there's this, Princess of Wales. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, it's the sort of thing I'd expect to find pinned up on the wall of a primary school done by one of their star pupils, 9 years old. I'm sorry, who did this? Hannah Uzo? They call this a graceful depiction of the Princess of Wales? And then there's this. I remember this one. Again, it's another snapshot. I did a video about this as well. It's not as bad as... Well, yeah, I thought that was bad until I saw this. And then I realised it's not that bad. It's not that bad after all. But it's a snapshot. It's not a proper picture. And, well, there's a whole lot I could go into about what's wrong with it, I have to say. But there's just one dreadful piece of art after another. What's up with the royal family? What's up with it? We have good artists. Now, I'll tell you what, there was another picture of the king, and it was sort of all blended into red. I'll find it. Hang on. Here it is. Now, I actually thought that was pretty good myself. I know it's sort of weird, but we can take photos now. We don't need the sort of representations that this type of portrait might have been important, say, maybe in the 19th century, although they wouldn't have done that either. I mean, okay. But I thought, well, this was a little bit unusual, a bit experimental, and that's fine. I don't quite know what Jonathan Yeo is trying to say, but it is thought-provoking. It is interesting. And it might be him, being an artist, trying to say something about what the future of the monarchy, the way the monarchy is going, could very well be, dispersing, like what was it, Adonis in that Star Trek episode where it just got bigger, this Greek god just got bigger and bigger and then disappeared. Remember that? Anyway, it could be that, or it could be something about like a phoenix rising. Who knows? The point is, it has something about it, and I thought it was quite good. And as for the depiction of the face, it is very good indeed, which is more than I can say for this. All right, well, that's my opinion of the latest bit of royal art. And here is the sort of story that the Telegraph rejoices in reporting. Labour-led council replaces First World War mural with blank wall. This looks like it's a piece of carving, doesn't it? Well, it isn't. It's a painting. And it's been very meticulously done. Look at this. Here it is with all the names on and, what looks like a piece of bronze sculpture showing a fallen soldier. It's a really technically accomplished piece of work. Very nice, I think. Well, the painting was getting a little bit grubby, apparently. The paint was wearing off, at least according to the council. So they decided to smarten it up. So they smartened it up by doing this. And that is so socialist, isn't it? That's clever. I've just realised what he did there. there's a ledge there, and the artist put that sculpture there. That really is clever. That really is clever. That's very, very clever. I really appreciate that. Well done. And then the council just goes over. It's not even a decent piece of painting. Look at that. They've just taken a brush and gone over the original painting, and they haven't even bothered to clean the rest of the wall, which just shows that all they wanted to do was remove the historical record. That's all they wanted to do. And they didn't care how ugly and soul-destroying it was. You know, all those soul-crushing buildings that you find in communist building programmes. Well, that's what it reminds me of. Let's look at the article. Veterans have been left utterly disgusted after a Labour-led council replaced a First World War mural with a blank wall. No, they didn't replace it with a blank wall. What they did, they excised it. It's slightly different. Crawley Borough Council in West Sussex said the mural in Tilgate Park had fallen into disrepair since it was painted in 2018. But locals have criticised the local authority for replacing the mural. No, not replacing it. Obliterating it, which was painted to mark 100 years since the end of the war and featured the words "For the Fallen" alongside silhouettes of soldiers. Absolutely disgraceful, but so typically socialist. And for my last trick, we have a little bit of extra information, maybe too much information, on the Bayeux Tapestry. Now, the Telegraph is fairly restrained about it. Missed penis, it says, on Bayeux Tapestry raises questions between scholars. It's this here, which is supposed to be the man's dangly bits dangling out of his kilt. And the Metro has, well, let's get this larger. Historians may have finally worked out how many penises are on the Bayeux Tapestry. So we have here now a new view of the Bayeux Tapestry. It isn't, after all, a historical record. It's simply a medieval game of Where's Willy? A historical row has broken out over the Bayeux Tapestry after an expert claimed to have discovered an extra member on the famous piece. Discovered an extra member on the famous piece. 7 years ago, Oxford academic Professor George Garnett claimed to have identified 93 depictions of male genitalia on the world-famous commemoration. Don't worry, it's not all human. 5 belong to men on the tapestry, while 88 belong to horses, including the one ridden by William the Conqueror, Professor Garnett said. I mean, maybe Professor Garnett has more to do than sit there counting willies on a tapestry. But then, as I say, he may have just won the game, mightn't he? Now, medieval scholar and expert on Anglo-Saxon nudity, would you believe there is actually an expert on Anglo-Saxon nudity? But these aren't Anglo-Saxons, they're Normans, aren't they? Anyway, now medieval scholar and expert on Anglo-Saxon nudity, Dr. Christopher Monk, has claimed he has found a missing penis from Professor Garnett's total, taking the real figure to 94. In the original count, the human genitals are all attached to naked figures, but there's one contested depiction of a running man with something hanging low beneath his tunic. Professor Garnett is firm No, Demi, just don't say it. Don't say it. Professor Garnett is firm in his view that this is a scabbard for a sword or dagger, but Dr. Monk is certain it's his manhood. So, is that a scabbard in your kilt, or are you just glad to see William the Conqueror? The detail is surprisingly anatomically fulsome. Quite frankly, I don't think it is, unless this man is meant to be black from the waist down. It looks to me more like either a water bottle or a scabbard or something like that. Frankly, it's a reminder that this embroidery is a multi-layered artefact that rewards careful study and remains a wondrous enigma almost a millennium after it was stitched. Oh, go away. You see, here you have the horses. There would be a reason for that, by the way. They want to show that these horses are stallions because real men ride stallions. It reminds me of a story from the Crusades, which would have gone completely unknown, except that the monk who was with the unit of crusaders, he wrote back to his bishop about this incident. And what had happened was that the crusaders, being real men, they were riding stallions. Now, the Saracens, they rode mares. They believed that mares were more tractable. And the way the Saracens had of fighting, they guided their horses with their legs, and they held the reins in their teeth. So you can't really pull a horse around with your teeth, or you'll lose your teeth. So you have to have a horse that will respond to leg cues really, really easily and quickly. Okay, so they did that, and they did it that way so that they could use their bows. They tended to fight with bows and arrows rather than swords. The two sides squared off and went towards each other, whereupon the stallions, being ridden by the Christian crusaders, got wind, so to speak, of the fact that several of the mares being ridden by the Saracens were in what you might call an interesting condition. And the resulting debacle had most of the combatants unhorsed and feeling very sheepish, while the horses had their little hour of fun. And when they'd managed to separate the lovebirds, they slunk away, agreeing that this battle had never happened. Okay, yeah, but that's the thing. These horses are depicted with all their equipment simply to show how masculine the forces were. This says here Harold, doesn't it? William the Bastard was, they say, riding a horse, depicted thus as well, which means that they were showing that both sides were very masculine. And so William's victory was it wasn't an easy win. It was a victory over a masculine opponent, or a set of masculine opponents. Okay, I think that's about it. Right, that was the grab bag for the week of 26th of April, 2025. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.